Welcome back to Newsstream 360, bringing you the latest news from around the world. If you've noticed your grocery bill or electricity costs climbing, you're not alone. Across the country, more and more people are feeling the pinch every time they shop for food or pay their monthly bills. It's not just a matter of perception. Prices really are rising, and it's affecting nearly everyone, regardless of where they live or how much they earn. Across America, families are feeling the squeeze as prices for essentials like beef and energy rise faster than wages. Even those who budget carefully are finding it harder to stretch their dollars as the cost of living continues to climb. For many, the weekly grocery trip has become a source of stress, with tough choices about what to buy and what to leave behind. The Consumer Price Index is up 2.7% this year, but energy bills have jumped over 5.5%, outpacing most paychecks. That means that even if your income has gone up a little, it's probably not enough to keep up with the rising costs of basic necessities like electricity, gas, and heating. Many households are now forced to cut back on other expenses just to keep the lights on. Ground beef now averages $13.49 per kilogram, a 12% spike from last year, making even simple meals a budget challenge. Families who once enjoyed backyard barbecues or homemade burgers are now rethinking their menus, swapping out beef for less expensive proteins or cutting back on meat altogether. The rising cost of food is changing the way people eat and gather. Nearly 90% of Americans now cite food costs as a top financial worry. It's a concern that cuts across age, background, and income level. Conversations about rising prices are happening everywhere, from neighborhood sidewalks to family dinner tables, as people try to make sense of why their money doesn't go as far as it used to. These price hikes aren't random. They're the result of new tariffs and economic policies aimed at protecting U.S. industries. When the cost of importing goods goes up, it often gets passed along to consumers in the form of higher prices at the store. Global supply chain disruptions and increased shipping costs have only added to the problem, making everyday items more expensive. The Trump administration's tariffs on imports were meant to boost American manufacturing, but they've also disrupted supply chains and driven up costs. While some industries have benefited, others have struggled to adapt, leading to shortages and delays that ripple through the economy. The effects are complex, and the consequences are being felt in unexpected ways. Now, the impact is felt not just by corporations, but by every American at the checkout and on their utility bills. Whether you're shopping for groceries, filling up your gas tank, or paying for electricity, the higher costs are impossible to ignore. For many, it means making tough decisions about where to cut back and how to make ends meet. The America First agenda is reshaping the economy and your family's bottom line. As policies continue to evolve, the true cost of these changes is becoming clear in the everyday lives of Americans, forcing families to adapt and rethink their financial priorities. America's appetite for electricity is surging, fueled by the rise of AI, data centers, and electric vehicles. Our aging power grid, built decades ago, is straining to keep up with this new demand. The Trump administration's response? Double down on fossil fuels, keeping old coal plants running and fast-tracking new gas projects. But building and operating these plants is now more expensive than ever, with turbine costs tripling and coal lagging behind renewables. As a result, nearly 60 utilities have announced rate hikes this year, adding billions to national energy bills. For families, that means a 10% jump in electricity costs in just 5 months, another hit to household budgets. The energy transition is here, but the costs are landing squarely on American consumers. President Trump's economic strategy centers on tariffs, taxes on imports designed to protect U.S. industries. The administration has built a tariff wall, with steep taxes on steel, aluminum, and even semiconductors. Foreign companies can avoid these tariffs only by building factories in the U.S., but that takes years and billions in investment. Tariffs on Canadian and Brazilian goods have strained trade relationships and raised costs for American businesses. The goal forced companies to bring supply chains home and reduce reliance on foreign rivals. But in the short term, these tariffs drive up prices for manufacturers, retailers, and ultimately, consumers. The cost of building new factories and shifting supply chains is passed down the line. America's push for self-reliance comes with a hefty price tag, one that's showing up in everyday expenses. The economic fortress is real, but so are its costs. The link between tariffs and your rising energy bill is direct. Key components for the power grid, steel towers, transformers, and more, are now subject to steep import taxes. utilities face higher costs to upgrade infrastructure, and those costs are passed straight to you. Building new power plants is pricier too, thanks to tariffs on steel and the soaring cost of gas turbines. The result: higher electricity rates for decades, locking in expensive energy for American families. The administration's push for fossil fuels combined with tariffs makes the energy transition slower and costlier. It's a paradox. Policies meant to boost American industry are making it harder and more expensive to modernize. The financial burden lands on households and businesses, not just big corporations. The true cost of tariffs is hidden in every monthly bill. As U.S. energy demand continues to climb, Canada's role as a reliable and stable energy partner is more vital than ever before. The sheer scale of energy cooperation between the two countries is often overlooked, but it forms the backbone of North American prosperity and security. Every single day, millions of barrels of oil and billions of cubic feet of natural gas flow south from Canada, fueling American homes, keeping the lights on, and powering factories from coast to coast. This constant stream of energy is what keeps the U.S. economy humming, especially as domestic production faces new challenges and regulations. Over 80% of U.S. electricity imports come directly from Canada, providing clean, reliable power to millions of Americans. And it doesn't stop there. A quarter of the uranium fueling America's nuclear reactors is mined in Canada, making our northern neighbor indispensable to the nation's energy grid. Canada is also investing heavily in renewables and critical minerals, positioning itself as a leader in the global clean energy transition. From wind and solar farms to the mining of essential minerals for batteries and electric vehicles, Canada is building the future of energy. This deep integration means America's energy security is directly tied to a strong, cooperative relationship with Ottawa. The two countries' economies are so intertwined that any disruption could ripple across both sides of the border. But with tariffs rising and trade tensions growing, the U.S. must tread carefully. Any disruption, even a brief one, could have immediate and far-reaching consequences for American consumers and industries alike. Canada's leverage is growing, and its vast resources, oil, gas, minerals, and renewables, are becoming even more essential for America's energy future. As global competition for resources intensifies, this partnership is a strategic advantage. The recent Trump-Carney call underscores just how crucial this partnership has become at the highest levels of government. Leaders on both sides recognize that cooperation is not just beneficial, but necessary. As domestic policies and global pressures drive up costs, America's need for Canadian energy and minerals will only increase. The U.S. relies on these imports to keep its industries competitive and its economy strong. The stakes for both countries have never been higher. In a rapidly changing world, the U.S.-Canada energy partnership is not just a convenience, it's a necessity for the future. The meat aisle tells the story. What was once a place of abundance now feels eerily empty, a quiet sign of a much bigger problem. Tariffs on Brazilian beef have sent prices soaring and left shelves emptier than most shoppers can remember. Brazil once supplied up to 27% of U.S. beef imports, helping keep prices stable and options plentiful for American families. But a sudden 50% tariff made those imports unviable, cutting off a major supply line almost overnight. As a result, shipments from Brazil plummeted by 80% in just a few months, leaving stores scrambling to fill the gap. The result? A 21% jump in wholesale beef prices as grocers compete for a shrinking supply. Retail prices have climbed 8–12%, making beef a luxury for many households who once bought it weekly. American families now pay record-high prices for ground beef, and many are forced to cut back or switch to cheaper proteins. All of this, the empty shelves and sticker shock, can be traced back to a single trade policy decision. Meanwhile, Canada seized the opportunity, spotting a gap in the market and moving quickly to fill it. Canada reopened its market to Brazilian beef, welcoming shipments that once went south of the border. Imports surged by 44%, giving Canadian shoppers more choices and keeping prices in check. Brazil, shut out of the U.S. market, quickly pivoted to new trade deals with Canada, redirecting its exports north. This shift has strengthened ties between Brazil and Canada, while American stores struggle to restock. The intended protectionism has backfired, benefiting Canadian consumers and businesses while leaving Americans with higher prices, fewer choices, and a sense of frustration at the checkout. Trade routes have shifted, but the cost is paid at the American checkout, where every dollar now buys a little less. Tariffs meant to help have made dinner more expensive for everyone. turning a simple meal into a reminder of how global decisions shape our daily lives. US-Canada trade isn't all smooth. Dairy is a major sticking point. Canada's supply management system tightly controls production and slaps huge tariffs, up to 298%, on foreign dairy above strict quotas. US access is capped at just 3.5% of Canada's market, making it nearly impossible for American producers to compete. The US exports $800 million in dairy to Canada, but imports far less in return. The Trump administration sees this as unfair and has pushed for more access, but Canada is holding firm. In a bold move, Canada passed a law barring any future government from dismantling supply management in trade talks. This red line signals that Canada will walk away from deals before giving up its dairy protections. The feud is intensifying, with both sides digging in. Dairy remains a flashpoint, complicating broader trade negotiations. The battle over milk and cheese is far from over. The high cost of living in 2025 isn't an accident. It's the result of deliberate policy choices. Tariffs on imports from beef to steel were meant to protect American jobs, but have driven up prices for families. The beef tariff cut off a major supply, spiking prices and shifting trade to Canada. Tariffs on industrial goods have made it more expensive to upgrade the power grid, with utilities passing those costs to consumers. Every electricity bill and grocery receipt now carries the hidden cost of these policies. The long-term benefits of reshoring manufacturing remain uncertain, but the short-term pain is clear. America's relationships with Canada and Brazil matter more than ever in a global economy. The America First experiment is being paid for at the checkout and in the mailbox of every American family.